Hi everybody, welcome to the Compounding Lab. Today I'm actually going to do a demonstration for you about how to use the triple beam balance. As you can see, we have a triple beam balance here in front of us. We have the pan for the balance on the left. There's a little knob underneath it just to adjust the balance of the pans. And then we also have the three different beams. The beam at the front is actually going to measure up to 10 grams, and it's in increments of 1 gram at a time. The beam in the middle goes up to 500 grams, those are in increments of 100, and the rear beam goes up to 100 grams, and those are in increments of 10. Whenever you're wanting to balance anything on the triple beam balance, you select your weight accordingly. You'll also notice just over to the side that there's a little number with a line that has to match up from the beams to the number in order to show that it's at balance before we begin. So before we actually add anything to the pan at all, whether that be a weigh paper or boat or anything that we're measuring, we always have to make sure that we balance the pan first with nothing on it. So that's what we're actually going to do now. Before we start, I just also want to show you that I actually have some paper towels out here just sitting on the side. Those are just for any spills in case we happen to have any. I've left 2 paper towels just dry, just for spills if we need them. There's also one that's been pre-moistened with some alcohol. I usually like to do this just as a recommendation so that if I have a spill, I don't have to leave the spill unattended to go over to the sink or to get any paper towels or to prepare anything. I just have it ready and available for me to wipe up my spill. Over on this side as well, I have some lactose that I've pulled out just as a non-medicated product just to use for our demo. I have a spatula and I also have a weigh paper. I'll be using this today for our demonstration. So what we're going to do first is just make sure that we actually get the triple beam balance balanced. As you can see right now, it's not at the 0 line. Anytime that we have this scale, the beam, up above the 0 line, we have to make sure that we move the dial that's underneath the pan slightly towards us. If the line is ever below the 0, then we would move the dial away from us. So right now, since it's up, I'm going to move this little dial over here just slightly towards myself. We'll then check again and see if it's at 0. We just have to wait till it comes to rest to be able to see that and determine whether it's at 0 or not. It's still above, so we have to move the dial again slightly towards us, just doing another rotation. And again, we check to see if it's at 0. We're getting closer, but still not quite. We'll do another rotation and check one more time. And that is pretty well on 0. That's about as close as we're going to get. So now we've actually balanced the triple beam balance, but there's nothing yet on the pan. In order to make sure that we're ready to start weighing our ingredient, we now have to do the exact same thing again, but now with a weigh paper or a weigh boat. I'm just going to use a weigh paper this time, just for the demonstration. So now that I've put the weigh paper on, if we look over here again, we're slightly above the 0. So since we're above the 0, again, we have to move the dial slightly towards us. I'm going to do one rotation again. We'll then double check and see where we're at. And that's still a little too high. We'll do another rotation. And we'll check again. And we keep on performing this step as many times as necessary until we have this at 0. Once it's at the 0 line, then we can stop. And that's very close now, but still a little bit out above. I'm still going to move this just slightly towards us. And hopefully this will be enough to get us at the 0 line. And that's pretty much right where we need to be. We can now go ahead and start weighing our substance. We're going to assume for our demo that we're going to weigh 5 grams of lactose. So I'm just going to move this sliding scale here over to the 5 gram mark. Right where the little notch is where we want to stop. Hopefully I can focus okay there. And that should actually then be for 5 grams. If I take my hand away, you'll notice now this is way below the 0. As we start adding our ingredient or our product to the pan, that will raise up the number here. And again, when we're at 0, we stop. We know that we've reached our equilibrium and that we've balanced. So we can now go ahead and start adding our lactose to the pan. Normally you would have 2 hands free for this. I don't. I'm just going to use 1 hand for our demo. So we can start adding our product to our pan. And as we add, if we go a little bit too high, that's actually then going to make this start to fluctuate. We know that we have a little bit too much. We're going to start taking some off. So I'm going to remove some now with my spatula, putting it back into the container and being careful not to spill. We're still a little bit too high. We're going to come down just slightly, again by removing a little bit more from the pan. And as you can see here, if I just release this back a little bit, we're actually getting very close, pretty much on the 0 mark. I'm going to put this back into my container again. I'll just bring this over here to zoom in, and you can see that we're at 0. We are good to go. So you would now be able to take your container, make sure that before you ever call your instructor for a check that your container has the lid on. Your instructor normally will have to take your container, lift it up, check the manufacturer, the name of your product, the expiry date, the lot number, all of that information. So if the lid is not on it, it could cause a spill. For safety reasons, make sure you always have your lid on your container. You'll also always clean off your spatula just to make sure that you're not putting any of the contaminated or dirty equipment on the counter. So we'll just wipe that off. And that can then go aside. You would then be able to take your product that you've weighed, you'd call your instructor for a check, they would double check that you have 5 grams, that you have the right product, that you've done the right calculations, and that you're actually at balance on your particular scale or on the balance that you're working on. Once you've done all of that, you could then remove your product and you can carry on with your next step or weigh out your next ingredient, whatever is applicable. And that brings us to the end of the triple beam balance. Just make sure that you always clean all of your equipment before you put it away, and make sure that you return the balances to their proper location. Thanks everybody, that's it for this video.